Hey folks, Rob here. We're going to continue on with our Chapter S enemy actions tutorial. This is going to be a continuation of the previous two on enemy actions. So I'm going to call this one part 2. It's really part 3, but uh, that one's already on the web, so I'm not going to retitle that one and just confuse everything. So this is enemy actions continued part 2. So it's going to be about an hour, and we're going to be going through the actions per phase of a player turn. So we'll cover what the enemy does in the friendly turn and what it does in the enemy turn. So let's get to it. All right, so carrying on from part 1 of the continuation of enemy actions, we have enemy attacks. So for this example, we're going to just forgo the route rally phase, because the only thing that happens there is, as per normal, you do your normal actions and you have the capability to self-rally to units incapable of self-rally. So don't forget to do that. And we're just going to jump right into the fire phase. So you must be an unbroken activated enemy unit to get a fire command, obviously. Now there's 4 tables that they use. We've already shown them. But again, depending on the organization or the unit's firing, determines which one you use. So we have infantry attacks. Again, we have infantry with anti-armor. Ordnance versus vehicles, and then ordnance versus infantry. So depending on what you're doing, you use either A3A through D to pick your target. When you get a fire command and you roll on, let's assume that we're going to have this unit here with their 50 cal, they're going to fire onto this unit here. So first thing we do is we give them a action die roll to see if they panic. In this case, they don't. And then the next thing we do is give them a fire command. Because they're adjacent, again, self-preservation, they will be forced to fire on this unit. So the command is going to be a 10. So you look at the table. Again, you go through the hierarchical list. So you figure out, for this case, it wouldn't apply. They have an automatic fire command, but assuming these guys were not here and there was not adjacent, and I rolled a 10 for a result, then you basically go through the list till you get the case that applies to you. So let's get a better example. Let's use this 447 here. So he has 2 targets, a third over here, and he may be able to reach that, but I think they're building a block line of sight. So he has at least 3 targets that he could choose from this location. So once you make your panic roll to see if you do, again, they do not, then they can fire, they get their fire command, and they'll roll to see what they actually have to do. In this case, I rolled a 4. So we're going to do IFT attack. We rolled a 4, and then we look at our list. So we have passenger rider crew, NA, passenger rider crew, NA, most support weapon, NA, with no PRC existing. Fire all at any vehicular target, which is ridiculous because they don't have any. Otherwise, fire inherent firepower at the closest target. Again, you just go through the hierarchical list, and we have a unit here that's 2 hexes away, so that'll be their target. So they just fire the normal 8 up 2 shot. Look at that cower, 4 on the 8. Should be all right, so we're in the prep fire phase, and the first thing we have to do, again, we have to start from the north, work our way south, from the friendly board edge to the enemy board edge. Rolling actions for each of these units to see what happens. Again, because these guys are in a platoon, you only need to make 1 roll for them. And they have an 8, so they're fine. Now, again, the rules as written say they should be getting move commands because they're always on the move. I don't like that rule, so I'm going to overrule it because I've already got a target and I'm stopped. I got a target and I'm stopped. This guy could actually fire on him as well. So there's absolutely no reason to move any of these units. So I'm going to forgo the command and I'm going to, or the rules as written, and I'm going to give them a fire command instead. So because they're acquired, they're going to have their automatic action. So again, no panic, so we can just roll right to prep. So we'll start off with a 4 firepower machine gun up 2. Nothing. And then we'll have to hit with the main armament. Again, we had a -2, +2 for the wood rubble. We'll cancel, and they're buttoned up. So we have a 7 or less to hit. So we got a hit, and we actually got a critical. What's the result? We have a 7, down 2 is a 5 on the H table. The 47, right? 45? Yeah, so it's going to be on the 8 table, a 5, which is a 2 check. Alrighty, and that would be enough to ELR in this case. And they'll break. Actually, that's not ELR. 10 would be ELR. All right, so our tank here is done. Now we can move to the next one. Again, he has to pay button up, +1 for this vehicle for LOS, 2 for the building as well. So that's going to be a total of +4 for the main armament. And we're going to fire the machine guns first. Actually, it would be 4 down 2, so it would be +2 on the main arm, but we're going to fire the machine guns first. So we'll fire the 4 firepower machine gun with a +4, +3. Nothing, almost broke him. And now we can do the main armament again with a +2. So we're going to need a 6 or less to hit, and we missed. So we mark him. I could fire this guy as well, but I'm going to forgo his shot just because the modifiers are too great. Yeah, +1 buttoned up, +2 for the LOS hindrance, and 5 for the building. With the machine gun would be a waste. I could attempt to acquire with the tank, but again, I'm not going to be hitting, and it's going to take a couple turns to get acquisition up, so I'm not going to bother firing. All right, so we've done a little bit of prep fire. Now let's look at the ordnance. So if you have, in this case, a gun, let's say, assume that he's been acquired on the tank. We have a multiple situation here. We have an infantry unit and we have a crew with a gun. So they're both going to get separate action die rolls. And just like in the last presentation there, the gun always goes first. Now we're going to roll for panic because he's acquired. It would just be an automatic attack. So in this case, he doesn't panic. Again, we don't care about the result. We just know that he didn't panic. So now we can fire on this guy here. So that's 10 hexes away with a -1 for acquisition, +1 for target size. All right, so this is a hull hit, and it is a hit. So then we look on the TK, and he does not have rate of fire. Now, if assume that this vehicle was destroyed because of that shot, and we rolled low enough to maintain rate of fire, obviously you would continue to fire at something else. If you also were to fire at infantry, say, instead of firing at the tank, for some reason infantry is in this location and you're going to fire at them, and you end up breaking all of them, maintaining your rate of fire, then you would find your next target and keep using up your rate of fire. The minute they're out of good order, you switch fire targets. Right, so you did a good shot, you broke the leader in the 2 squads, now you switch fire to a different target. When it comes to intensive fire, this is only against an adjacent target. So if we, let's put the gun here. Let's put him on the ground floor. All right, and our tank, ignore all the other enemy units and the suspects, and our tank is moving this way, this direction. Assuming you've final fired already, you're out of options. You could intensive fire because this has a main armament that's functioning and it's unshocked. And or if you had infantry in that same location, the infantry is unbroken. So in this case, you would be okay to take the final fire shot. If these units are too far away for final fire adjacent, then you cannot do it. And of course, you must be capable of getting a non-critical hit attempt. So if your only result is going to be snake eyes, then you would not be shooting. You're not going to risk breaking your gun on a Hail Mary shot. All right, when it comes to ordnance support weapons like this ATR, for example, we have units adjacent. Now, in this case, this 628 will be forced to fire adjacently at this unit here, adjacent to it. It's self-preservation, and so they must do that. However, they also have an anti-tank weapon. Now, if they fire their inherent firepower, or the 50, which is what they're going to fire, at this squad, and they cower, they would not be able to fire the ATR next. So the first thing you always do is fire any ordnance support weapon first before you'd use inherent firepower. So in this case, we could fire the ATR at the tank. Again, our attempt at killing it's going to be nil because the ATR is only a 5 to kill. It's a 6 armor. And even with a 2 hex range, it's only going to be modified 7, I believe. Russian ATR is a 6, and then its 2x range is a +1. Yeah, so you'd have a modified 7 down 6 would be a 1. Obviously, there's not a hope in hell, barring a critical, of you taking that shot. So you would try for an immobilization shot prior to firing your inherent firepower. So in this case, we'll attempt a deliberate immobilization. So we have a +1 for target size and a +5 for deliberate immobilization, which means we need a 4 less to hit, and it has to be a hull hit. Okay, so our ATR missed. Now we can fire our inherent firepower or the support weapon at our adjacent unit as part of our final protect or part of our prep fire. So we're going to fire the 16 firepower +3, and it's going to be 12 on the 16. Not a greatest roll. 12 on the 16 is a miss. Wow. And because I rolled a 6, I don't have rate. So assume that this was a cower. Again, if I had failed to fire my support weapon first, I would not be able to if I had in fact cowered. So in this case, it's just a wasted shot. But just remember this sequence. If you have a ordnance support weapon like a light mortar or an ATR, fire it first prior to any inherent, just on the off chance that your unit cowers. When it comes to special ammunition, this gun here has smoke as well as heat. It's going to be up to you as a player to decide whether or not you use it based on the case. Again, what's in the best interest of the Russian gun? Is it to fire smoke or is it to fire heat? Again, depending on what's going on. Again, just to go back to that deliberate mobilization, if your final to kill die roll is less than or equal to 4, you're not, again, that's a Hail Mary. You're going to be trying for deliberate mobilization. So continuing on with the prep fire, let's look at fire groups. Now, rules as written, you are not allowed to make multi-location fire groups in the prep fire phase. The only time you can have that is in the advancing fire phase after you've moved. Your half firepower, you want to try and maximize your potential. So I don't like that rule because when you're fighting in things like terrain, again, this is +3 stone. Fortified, you're looking at +4. You throw in a couple line of sight hindrances, and you're quickly unable to hit. I would have no problem overruling the rules by fire grouping multi-locations if possible. However, rules as written don't let you do that. So you do, however, have to form a fire group if you're in the same location. So you're always going to fire at the same target. So in this case, we'll give them an action roll for that location, see if they panic. They do not. And then we'll give them a command. All right, so we rolled a 3. A 3 on the IRT attack table gives us fire all possible spray fire at the closest target. We don't have any spray fire. We look at the least terrain effect. So we have, again, a unit here in wood rubble, and we have a building in stone, so we have a winner. So we fire at the target in least TEM. No, excuse me, that's still if you have spray fire. So most targets, no. Most target, any non-spray fire at target in at least 1 TEM. Location with most target SMC or the closest. So again, you go through all that. We can ignore this because we don't have spray fire. And we have to focus on this because we don't have it. So we have non-spray fire at target in at least one terrain effect, or a location with most target SMC, which again, none of these ones really apply. Closest. So, and we have a winner with the closest. So because this unit here in the wood is closest, it's going to take the attack. Now again, it's already a broken half squad. According to the rule that we just rolled, they would be forced to fire on the squad, or you could overwrite them and instead fire on the other unit. And that's perfectly valid, again, to overrule it. So we're going to fire 8 firepower +3 onto this unit here. All right, that's going to be a miss. And then we do, again, same with our units here. Now, remember, no multi-location fire groups in the prep fire phase. However, again, once you have stuff like 227s and 426s, again, you're going to have very hard to penetrate stone, and therefore you may want to forego the no multi-location fire groups and actually generate one. Again, do what's in the best interest of the unit. Now, if we go to the advancing fire phase, assuming our units have moved, let's put him here. Let's put you here as well. All right, our units have approached. We're in the advancing fire phase now, so now we can do our fire, and we can fire group. So now the engineer's got assault fire, so he would have a 7 with a 6 is 13, and then a 4 brings it up to the 16 table. Again with a, or actually we could, these two units could fire on him, and this unit's going to fire on him. That'd be a better way to do it. So let's fire that. So this is going to be, again, you have a 7, you have a 4, so it's going to be 11. So it's going to be on the 8 table, and +2 against this broken dude. So that's going to be pinning task checks, so no effect. This unit here is going to fire 6 firepower at this unit in the stone, 6 up 3. Again, no effect. When it comes to forming fire groups in the advancing fire phase, again, it's up to you as a player to decide what's the best orientation. If, for example, you had multiple units, obviously you would all coordinate your attacks to eliminate that unit. In this case, rubble blocking line of sight to these two locations. These two are really forced to fire at the half squad. But again, it's player discretion on how you do that. All right, so let's bring him back. Assume that never happened. Get rid of the prep. And we'll go into the German movement phase. All right, so again, in the defensive fire phase, or excuse me, defensive first fire part of the movement phase, you cannot form multi-location fire groups, only same location. So the exception of that is human wave. So if we have a 467 here that wants to dash through the AFV hex into G4, he's going to be able to be shot at and by any of these units. Now, how do you determine who fires? You basically look at the activation check table, and if you meet these parameters to cause an activation, then they're allowed to fire. So we are 4 hexes away in the AV slot. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a +1 for the vehicle, -1 for non-assault. So we're at 4 hexes with a 0 modifier, and we can actually shoot because we're right here. So anybody within 4 hexes that has a modified 0 or better can shoot at this unit here. So we'll do these guys first. Again, you always do the action die roll to see if they panic. No, in this case, so it'll be half firepower, 4 flat. 7 on the 4 is a pinning, and they are good. First fire them. Now we can do the second guy. This is a 227. He could fire 1 firepower. No, that'd be half, so don't worry about that. We have a 628 and a 447. The 628 would be long range. They do meet the parameters to fire. The question is do you waste the 628 shot on that, or do you fire at something else? That would be a total of 6 firepower. Halved would be 3, so we'll be on the 2 table because of the range of the 628. So yeah, let's do that. So we're going to fire a 2 firepower snapshot at these guys dashing. 5 on the deuce, I think is a PTC. No, NMC. All right. And they heat a battle. So 7, they're just going to battle harden. And they'll be able to continue on their way. So just remember, when it comes to defensive first fire, you must meet the parameters for activation in order to fire. You're not going to waste your shot if you don't match the results of your table 1. When it comes to ordnance, again, we're in the German movement phase, so this tank wants to spark up. Right away, this gun is going to take a shot because we don't wait for it to disappear into E7, E6. We want to take a shot at it while we still have it in line of sight. So again, action die roll for panic purpose. He does not panic. He has an automatic fire command, and he's going to fire at the vehicle which is now in motion. And he's acquired it, so that's going to be a total +3 -1 is a +2. From an 8 is a 6 or less to hit. So he missed. We've acquired twice, and we don't have any rate. Now we have to just watch the tank do whatever it's doing. So now that we know that this gun is out of ammunition, maybe we'll move the Stug down the road, or maybe we'll come in this way to support. Just remember that ordnance, if it's acquired especially, will always take that shot before a unit leaves LOS. Again, you're playing both sides, so quote unquote the Russian doesn't know what you're doing. He doesn't know if you're going to head to E7 or if you're going to come up this set of roads. So he's going to fire automatically the minute you spark up. If it comes to something like street fighting or non-CC or CC reaction fire, don't forget to do that as well. Should you be silly enough to drive a tank up against infantry and they've not fired or final fired, then they have a chance of jumping on you in street fighting. And yeah, it's only a half squad, but there always is a chance of getting some kind of reaction or mall use, what have you. So again, there's a lot to remember. But if Molotovs are available and the unit has one, then of course don't forget to use it. And the same goes with throwing DCs and such, or placing DCs. All right, let's assume that we have our squad up here in a on the rubble on the first level, and again they're manning their 50 cal. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to move up one of these units. So let's bring you up. All right, so now we have him up. Now we'll have to fire at him because he's adjacent. Again, we want to self-preserve ourselves, so we're going to fire. So again, it's going to be 14 double is 28. With a, assuming he used a assault move, it would be a +3 on the 20. All right, so we roll a 10. A 10 means that we're probably going to miss. That would be a 13. Oh, it's a PTC. All right, so we get a task check, and he pins, so that's good. All right, and now because he's still good order, even though he's pinned, we want a final fire. And so we're going to fire the 6 firepower inherent and not the 50 cal. So this will be on the 6 table up 3. Because again, he used to move to get in, so we can do that. That's going to be a net 9 on the 6, which is no effect. So now we final fired, and the German keeps coming. We're going to bring up these guys here. Once more, because of the self-preservation, they may be forced to fire. However, because we're already final fired, if we do final protective fire, we risk breaking our unit. Even with the commissar, there's always that chance. With 9 morale, there's still a chance. So how do you determine if you can fire? You take a normal task check. Now we're going to use things like the terrain effect of the target location, as well as any moving and open on assault movement. So in this case, it's going to be +3 to the die. So when I do my task check to see if I pass, so 5 up 3 is going to be an 8, which is less than my morale, even with the commissar, which means that I will final protective fire at it and just hope I don't break. All right, so I broke. All right, so when it comes to final fire, or final protective fire, excuse me, remember that you're factoring in the modifiers of what you're shooting at as a task check die roll modifier. If you pass your task check, then you fire. If you fail, then you hold your fire. When it comes to final fire, obviously you'll play that as it comes. So again, this unit here was first fired. Whatever reason there's a unit in this location, you can automatically give this guy a final fire command as appropriate. Let's advance to the Russian rally phase, and let's talk about enemy OBA. Now, unlike you, the player, enemy OBA is just dealt with, or just deals with artillery strikes. An artillery strike is just an FFE that gets placed, random location die roll to where it finally ends up, and it can repeat itself depending. Now, the number that you get is always a variable, and it's dependent on the RE that you roll. So if you look at the REs, And we look at 31, 32, or 33, we have two artillery strike options, and we have a harassing fire option. If we also rolled a 71, we would have a creeping barrage, so that would suck. So let's look at 31 and 32, and what we're looking at is the number of FFEs is a die roll made on A6A or A6E if you roll a 32. So what are the differences? A and E. If it's table E, it's 1 or 2. If it's A, it could be 4. You could have 4 FFEs dropping on your ass just like that. So assuming that we rolled a 31, we're going to roll on the A6A table. So we just use one die. We rolled a 3. That should be 3 A6A. Yeah, 3 gets us 3 FFEs. The next thing we do is roll on the Chapter H OBA availability to see what they are. So in this case, you rolled a 5, or excuse me, a 6. All right, so you look at your Chapter H notes. For us, we're playing the Russians. Remember Kiev 42, and we rolled a 6. 6 gets us a 120 millimeter OBA. Now, all the FFEs, all 3 of them, are going to be 120 OBAs. What I like to use is the templates, the overlay, excuse me, for that, and I always label them with what it is, just so we don't forget. So remember, it's always going to be the same for all 3 of them. So let's duplicate that 3 times. Now, how do we use them? Remember, we don't have any spotting rounds to do. We don't have any radio contact, battery access, none of that applies. All we have is this priority list. So we need to place it on a minimum unit size of 3 that is closest to the enemy board edge. So in this case, we've only got 2 options. We've got 2 squads in each location, so we could roll randomly between which one takes it. Alternatively, if they fired their support weapons, and for the purposes of solitaire, a heavy weapon is any weapon that has 3 portage points or more, so the medium would qualify as a heavy weapon. So if these guys had fired in the preceding turn, then you could target them with your artillery strike as well if you roll a 4 or more. So the first one up, we do not roll that. So now we have to pick between 1 and 2. 1 to 3 will be the north, so it's going to be the north one. The way it works, you just drop the FFE directly on them. No accuracy is at all. It's always going to deviate. And then you do a random location die roll, just like you're adjusting a spotting round. Again, no modifiers. So we're going to go 1 for 2. That's not too bad. 1, 2. All right. It gets resolved. This is where its final destination is, and it gets resolved versus all units. And then it gets flipped over to an FFE2. And then we do our second one. So now again, we could opt to drop it on the heavy weapon if you roll a 4 or more, which we don't. Now we're going to drop it on one of these 2. Let's randomize it. Again, 1 to 3 will be the north. So this time it's going to be the south. All right, we're starting to get close to friendly units, or friendly enemy units, so we don't want that necessarily. So let's randomly correct where it goes. And it's going to go 5 for 6. Jeez. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Left. It gets resolved, and then it gets flipped over to FFE2. And then our last one. Once more, we can try and land it on the heavy weapon guy. Again, no. 1 to 3 is north, so it's going to be on the north dude. And we roll random correction to see where it lands. So it's going to go 1 for 5. That's way off the map. So again, let's assume that we rolled a 3 and a 4. We're going to go direction 3 for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're now covering our own units, which means this OBA would automatically be canceled. All right, so if the unit size of enemy outnumbers the friendly, the FFE will be canceled. Alternatively, you could also place smoke and or white phosphorus if your ordnance is capable of firing white phosphorus. You can even fire white phosphorus if you're still in the FFE, again, provided that the enemy, or I should say the friendly units, outnumber the enemy. Anytime you have more enemy than friendly, the FFE will be canceled. All right, assume this unit was destroyed from the K8, from the artillery. We have an FFE2, and we have no targets under it. So the first thing we must do is an automatic correction. So we just roll again randomly, and it's going to go 2 for 2, so it's going completely the wrong way. 1, 2. It gets resolved. We almost caught our tanks in that, and then it gets flipped over to FFEC. This one here, these units in the house were able to withstand the blast. We actually would be in the uh, German defensive fire phase at this point. Let's say that in the preceding movement phase that these enemies would have left that location and moved into the woods. Again, we look at, oh wait, it's not even centered. There we go. We have no targets, so we must do an automatic correction. All right, so this time we're going to go 6 for 2. So once more, we're heading off the map. Now it gets flipped over to FFEC after any kind of resolution. Now we go to the next fire phase for the Russians, which is their prep. Now we have to roll to see if we get continuation. You'll only get continuation if you roll a 1 or a 2, and this is modified by number of friendly units inside the blast radius. So in this case, there's none, so they both need a 1 or a 2. So let's start with this guy here. So we have a 2, so that continues. Now the first thing that happens is we roll a random location, and then we're going to go 6 for 5. So once more, we're heading way off into the woods. We're probably never going to bring that one back, but you still keep it on board, and it always has a chance of it coming back. So we put that back to FFE2 after it's resolved. This guy here, we rolled a 5, so this one is canceled. Right, now if, for sake of argument, this FFE was in this location, again, let's make it an FFEC, and we roll to see if we can continue it. We rolled a 4. Let's look at our modifiers. We have 1. We only have 1 unit in here, so it's only a -1. Again, it would be canceled. If we had if we had rolled a 3, for example, just because of that 1 unit, we would be able to flip this over to an FFE1 and do the whole thing again. All right, so it's flipped over to FFE1. It gets resolved. Let's destroy this unit here. And it gets flipped over to an FFE2. Again, on the next fire phase, it gets an automatic correction because no enemies underneath it. So it goes 1 for 3. 1, 2, 3. Wow. All right, gets resolved and then gets flipped over to FFEC. And then again on the next turn, once more you roll to see if you can get continuation. All right, so the takeaways for enemy OBA is there's no spotting around. You go straight to FFE, and the original target hex is always the unit silhouette of 3, closest to the enemy board edge. If it's multiple locations, then you just randomize. There's also the opportunity to fire on a unit that has recently fired a heavy weapon. Again, anything 3 portage points or more constitutes a heavy weapon. If that's the case in a preceding phase, then you could have directed your artillery on them if you roll a 4 or more on 1 die. I've found by playing a couple of games with artillery strikes that they're really horribly ineffective. Again, it really depends on A, the caliber, and B, the density where you land. Because I've done a lot of city fighting, typically nice and close to the enemy. The minute you start covering up enemy troops with an FFE blast radius, typically they're going to get canceled automatically just for self-preservation purposes. So they are not as effective as normal, which is one reason why you have a variable number of FFEs. You can't just use the one. Yeah, and the other takeaway again is if you start to land amongst your own units and you have a risk of killing yourself, obviously self-preservation, you would maybe convert this to smoke mission instead. You always have that option, and or white phosphorus. All right, when it comes to snipers and such, it's handled as per normal. So if you have a Russian sniper, it's say land in this location, we look at our priority list. We want to target in a VPO. Again, this mission does not have any, but say, for example, that this building was a VPO location. Controlled by the Axis. Then we would have to pick a unit that's the closest. And this one, in this case, it's obviously going to be this stack. All right. If there's no VPO, so you don't look at that one, you look at what's next, location with best known leader. Again, we only have the 9-1, so it's probably going to go there. If this leader is not there, you look at friendly CE, crew exposed AFE, highest friendly stack, including system markers. So if you have a lot of preps, pins, TIs in a stack, you may have less numbers, but you might have more counters. If that's the case, that's who you target with your sniper. So we have a 9-1, and we've already made the qualification for the second one, if not the first one. So we're just going to put the sniper there. Again, then you just randomize it as per normal. When it comes to a sniper check, say for example the German sniper lands on, let's bring the 6-1 up here. A sniper wounds the leader, and you have 2 squads. It's up to you, again, player discretion, whether or not you conduct a sniper check. You look at your modifiers. Again, we got 2 squads. We need snake eyes or less to reduce the sniper. What are our odds of doing that, as opposed to 8 firepower, potentially maybe 6 against one of these units? You have to weigh that option. As a player, you decide whether or not you're going to do a sniper check. Now, when it comes to air support, again, we look at our random event. Right here, 64-65, enemy air support. Again, you roll on the Chapter E 7.1 for the information you require, which is going to direct you to the Chapter H for your nationality. Or if you look at EC.1, 7.1, excuse me, it points you to the air support that's in the Chapter H rules. So this is the steps you go through to determine what you can get. So we're playing Russian, and it's 42. We need a 4 or less. Well, we're going to get aircraft, so don't worry about the number, but you worry about the exponent. That would determine whether or not bombs are available. All right, so again, we needed a 3 on 1 die to see if we have bombs. We have no modifiers, so let's roll if we have bombs. We need a 3 or less, so we got that. So we do have a fighter bomber with bombs. And then we determine the number as according to Chapter E. All right, so 721 tells us that we have to make a single die roll that's halved to determine number of planes. So a 2 is going to be 1. So we're going to have 1 Russian fighter bomber, 42, with bombs. All right, so it's going to come in, and it's going to attack in the next enemy movement phase. All right, so let's go to turn 3 for the Germans. And we're going to be in the movement phase. Your bomber is sitting around waiting to find a target, and this tank here decides to spark up, and you figure that's a good target. I'm going to attempt to take that one. When you pick a target, again, you're going to use player discretion. Typically, it will be the one that offers you the best chance of making a sighting task check. If you look at our modifiers for sighting task check, again, here we have target. If we look at the vehicle, for example, it's a -1. Not entirely concealed is a -2. Right there is a -3. If, on the other hand, we want to target the infantry in the building, we're looking at a +3, -2 for not being entirely concealed, and it's a +1. Again, your morale, your base morale is going to be 8, and any pluses to your die roll are probably just going to hinder you. If you have friendly units, for example, within 4 hexes, you get a +1. You throw in any LOS, hindrances, and same kind of thing. You also must decide as a player whether or not you do a strafing or a point attack. You have to decide what's in the best interest. In this case, I can sight in the tank, and I could continue my attack into G4 and attempt to shoot up the infantry. So in this particular case, you would probably do a strafing attack. So you do your MGs, you move a hex closer, fire your bomb, fire MGs once more into the next hex, and then drop your bomb. Remember, the minute you drop your bomb, you can no longer fire your MG. Again, we have a priority list like most things, so you want to target the most powerful AFV that the friendly side has, any armed vehicle or a vehicle, and then you work your way down through the list. Again, infantry in a building that's concealed is not even on the chart, because the chances of you making that are so slow, you're not going to waste your effort on that. When it comes to mistaken attack, which is what happens if you roll a 12, an original 12 or higher on a sighting task check, then a mistaken attack occurs, and that's basically you attacking your own forces. So in this case, say we rolled at 12, we'd have to find, again, a unit using the same priority list as if it was, right? You find your target, which has the best chance of hitting it, and then you conduct your attack against your own forces. Once your fighter bomber loses its bomb, and it still is capable of strafing attacks. That it continues to do that. However, should your uh, machine guns at any point break, your plane gets recalled. Or if you're damaged, for example, then you'll have an automatic recall as well. All right, let's look at enemy movement phase. So it's going to be the Russian turn three, and the some general things. Again, some of this is going to be review. If you have suspects that are still in advanced attitude, like this yellow one, and he has not been activated, he obviously gets an automatic move command towards the friendly board edge. If you have hold attitude, we put them back to hold. Hold attitude are never going to move until at such point they become activated and you roll an action that requires them to move. Again, the order for sequence is when it comes to movement for activated units, you always move your berserk guys, and then you move your human wave, and then you move your the rest of them. Again, there are typical automatic actions, such as once more, is say for example this unit had been berserk, it would be forced to move first. But there's also things like units that have acquisition. Again, this is an automatic fire command, much like AFVs have an automatic move command. Again, barring any panic, AFVs will always get a move command. Again, I'm not a big fan of that. Um, Depending on the situation, like here, for example, if I had acquisition on that unit and this guy had acquisition on this unit here, I would not move. I would fire in the prep fire phase. But again, rules as written say they must get an automatic move command for AFVs. Um, when it comes to attitude, again, with advanced attitude and activated units, they always share the same move command. So we have here advance, we have some advance up here, and we have some advance up here. And of course, we have a berserk unit. Now, the berserk unit, his course of action is already determined. He's going to charge the closest enemy. So we'll put him here for now. Um, Next up, you would roll a movement command for these units that have to move in advanced attitude. So we look at our table. So that's a 3. We look at our advanced attitude infantry movement, and we're going to assault move towards the nearest friendly controlled VPO in LOS. If no such location in LOS, see move command 5. Now again, this mission does not have any VPO, but we're going to treat this building as one. So we could do that. However, if we want to say it's not, then we can look at number 5. If any known friendly unit in LOS, assault move into location with highest TM, with most targets available therefrom. So the rest of this we ignore because we have a known friendly unit in LOS. Excuse me. If we use movement command number 3, assault move, these units here again, you don't move as a stack. You move them individually. This guy could fire. You just proceed in such a fashion with all your units carrying out the same command. So everybody here is going to get an advance. This guy will throw him into there. Say he made it there without dying. However, when it comes to hold attitude units, then it's a bit of a different game. So let's bring this guy back and we'll make him hold. All right, so we have 3 units. Now, because of the random nature of business, each one of them is going to be getting a move command. So we look at their hex coordinate to determine what they do. If you're in an odd coordinate, you get 1 roll. And if you're in an even coordinate, you get another one. So these 2 are evens. This one is odd, so we'll do one at a time. Let's do the odd one first. What does he get? He gets an 11. So once more, we look at the hold attitude table, A4A, and we rolled an 11. So move towards nearest friendly controlled VPO in LOS. Otherwise, one not in LOS but closest in hexes, double time if necessary. Now for him, he does have eyes on this building, and he's going to be moving towards it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, he'll have to take his chances with any kind of shooting. You may want to play it a little bit smarter. Maybe he'll come all the way up into this location here, and then from there he can dash in. But at any rate, he's going to be moving. Now we do our other 2 guys. Because they're even coordinate, they get a separate roll. So somebody roll a 6. Again, we're still on the hold attitude. And a 6 is if any good order friendly unit in LOS, see move command 5. So we do have friendly in LOS. Excuse me, friendly units, yes. Um, so we move command 5 is assault move into location with terrain greater than your current location. Into location any positive, inherent hexite TM with a target, or into any location with positive TM or a random direction. Again, in this case here, because we're in stone, we don't really have an option to move into a higher terrain effect. So basically none of those are going to apply, which means that we would roll randomly to see where they go. Again, you could make the player discretion to say that that's ridiculous and we're just going to stay. Maybe you'll move into this position where you can fire group. That kind of thing is acceptable. The other one would stay. You've just wasted your prep fire. However, now you have to wait for the advancing fire. Again, AFV will always get a move command. So barring panic, so let's give them a panic check. All right, so they don't panic. And now we give them a move command. So we have a 7. All vehicles, again, whether hold or advanced attitude, always get moved. And a 7 gives us move towards nearest friendly controlled VPO. Stay on road. Stop when 3 hexes from the location if a target is in adjacent to it. So we already have eyes on the building. We can see over the rubble. We can see over the trees to this 2-story building. So we are in sight, and we do have 3 hex range. We do see an enemy that is adjacent to the VPO. So we could use this. We've met the conditions of the command. Therefore, we can carry it out. Now, if we were to continue down the list, if we're already 3 or less hexes away, which we are, we move toward it, entering it if possible, conducting an overrun if possible, as long as a bog die roll is not required. So again, in our case, we are 3 hexes away from the VPO. We are 3 hexes away from this unit, but it's in rubble. So we're not going to try and overrun it. What's next? Otherwise, stop when adjacent to it. If already in adjacent to a location, you see a different move command. So in this case, our units all have to start up, so we got to stall. They do not stall, and they can then move according to the command. So because they're radialist, they must move in a platoon. So this guy will start up for 1, and then he goes 2, 3. Of course, this unit would follow him as much as possible, and of course, it would lose acquisition because they don't have gyros. This unit as well would follow the same. Again, he has a target, so he can stop. As long as you have 1 lead vehicle, which meets the conditions, the rest of them should follow. So they would have moved 1 hex at a time. I just moved them in that fashion. Now again, because we have building, well, we have rubble on this side and a building this side, so we would not be able to do street fighting. But if this had been a building unrubbled, then we could have been tried to engage the tank, even if it's a half squad. Of course, we'd have troops on the ground, but we would have pre-fired all this time, and we also had a berserk unit coming in. So more than likely, this half squad would have been final fired and unable to jump on the vehicle anyways. As a matter of fact, let's mark them with a final fire. And these guys as well. Again, stacks, right? I'm bad for this. I really am. If you're playing the enemy, do not move as a stack unless there's going to be a 0 chance of defensive first fire. In this case here, for example, this guy's final fired. I'm assuming there's no residual in this location, and nobody else can see this guy. These buildings here will be blocked by, or line of sight will be blocked potentially. Actually, he would see. No, he's on the ground, so that would be rubble hex. So he would not be able to see this location. You could then move as a stack, but typically, get into the habit of moving individually. Try not to overstack whenever possible. Always spread out your resources. So basically, don't move as a stack. Um, Now there are, generally speaking, having said all that, three types of moves. So there's random, or excuse me, roll as start. There is roll each hex, and then there is moving towards a VPO. So each of the different move commands will give you one of those three options. Typically, the most common is VPO. However, you do sometimes have things like this, number 7, where you roll at start. If that's the case, you look at the attitude. Again, if we're in a hold position here, and let's move some of these units back. All right, and we have move commands for some of them, even though they're in hold. All right. If you get a move command, again, in hold attitude, odd coordinate, get one roll, even gets another one. You look at the rosette. In this case, the diagram on the right matches our map layout. So this is what we're going to use. So let's give a roll command for the odd number one here. So that's a 5. 5 is assault move with terrain of current location, which we already did, random direction. Now, if we were to pick a random direction, we would have to roll one die, and anywhere that 1 to 6 is what we would end up doing. If, on the other hand, we had rolled a 7, we would move our full movement factor, roll at start. So we picked the one direction. Um, this time we rolled a 5, so a 5 is going to be due north. So this guy here is going to be heading north for 2. He could bypass for 1, 3, and then he's going to stop because it's going to be a map edge and he cannot exit off the map edge. Um, Again, one reason why I dislike the move tables is because of silly things like that. Now, we get another move command for the odds. Say, for example, it is the let's look at an advanced attitude one. Right, so let's assume that these guys here with advance with the moves are rolled a number 8, so they have roll each hex. So again, you move it individually. Say these guys are stacked. You pick the first guy up, you roll each hex. Because we are in advanced attitude and the diagram on the right matches our board layout, we need a 1 to 3 is north, 4 to 6 is south. So we take the first guy and he's going full move, roll each hex. So we roll south. Oh, wrong one. That would be south. So he would be in the wood stone. That would be 3. And he still has one more move. So if I roll a 1 to 3, I did, then he would come out again. All right, and then you do the next guy, assuming he lived. He probably would not. The next guy is the same way. You roll a 1. 1 to 3 is to the north, so this time he's heading this way. I did it again. A 4, now he's heading south. And that's only for 2 moves, so he still has 2 movement left. And now we're going to go north again, so we have to stop because we have a target. However, because the move command A said stop upon entering a building location if target's available, we could have ignored that command and just stayed in this location and advance first fired. Again, we would use half firepower. This is what I mean about using the charts. Sometimes this decision doesn't make any sense, especially hold attitude. Again, you roll a 1 and you use double time if necessary, you could run completely away from the battle. On the other hand, again, depending on terrain, maybe that's a good thing. It maybe depends on the situation. So, as a player discretion rule, do not be afraid to overrule the decision that's generated based on what you think is best interest of the unit. All right, and now the last one is move towards VPO. Again, this mission does not have any, but if we were to put VPO out, typically most missions deal with some kind of VPO location, and your requirement is to secure as many of those so you can figure out what they're worth. Again, we're going to cover this in a later video. Um, in this case, this building is an axis VPO, and therefore it's going to be the target of any units that are moving towards it if they're given a command, again, to the nearest VPO location. You would typically ignore the one that you're in, assuming it's not an improved position and you're not in hold attitude. You would be able to leave this VPO and conduct your attack. So once more, if these guys were advance, then they could leave the building with a move command. If they are hold, then they have to stay in the building because it's a VPO. So VPOs play a very important part. Again, we're going to cover most of that in another video. When you get a command to move into an enemy VPO, and example, this one here is a friendly VPO the Germans haven't captured yet, you ignore your own location and you move towards this priority list. Again, friendly controlled, least amount of friendly units in size, any unit in LOS, and location with the highest inherent terrain. So if you have an action die roll to move, again, you're advanced. So you look at the table, we rolled a 4. A 4 on the advance gives us, if we have 2 or more known good order in LOS, see move command 2. We see him, and we see these guys here. Move command 2 says assault into location with highest TEM. Now, if on the other hand we had a command to move towards VPO location, so we got number 3, or sorry, we got number 2. We're already in a location, we're not in a stairwell. Our next call of action will be toward the nearest friendly controlled VPO location. Again, we would ignore our existing one and we would move closer to the enemy. Remember, always, if you're going to move 1 hex, it's considered to always use assault movement. And of course, there are prohibited locations that you must bear in mind whenever you're moving. So things like FFEs, minefields, etc. If you got a command and you roll poorly to exit off the south board, it's an ineligible board edge. So you would actually stop in the last playable hex. The only way you can exit is if an RE directs you to go back to the enemy board edge, or if you advance in the process of exiting off the friendly board edge. So that's only the friendly board edge or enemy board edge that you can possibly exit off of. So any command that tells you to exit, you basically stop in the last playable hex. If you get into things like wadis and gullies, of course, you'd want to take the protection of the gully, so you would move up into crest status. And just lastly, any suspect, as we said, that makes it off the friendly board edge, because that's their direction, would be worth 2 exit VP. All right, so let's look at enemy AFV and movement. Now, these 3 BT7s came on as part of a random event. They started back here in this location on the road. Again, they're coming in at platoon formation. And whether or not you're radialist doesn't matter. Anytime you have multiple AFVs coming in from the same random event, then they all enter in platoon formation. So you do the normal platoon movement, you move through the hexes until such point as you spot an enemy, at which point you stop, and you're now free from moving in platoon movement. Now, in this case, these are Russian tanks that are radialist, and therefore that doesn't apply. They'll always be using platoon movement. If this was normal tanks like these Stugs, for example, that are not radialist, or excuse me, have radials, then they can move independently once they target an enemy. Whether or not you stay crew exposed or button up, typically When I moved them on board, I brought them on crew exposed so they could take advantage of the road bonus, even with their 23 move. And it's not until you're within 12 hexes and or line of sight of a friendly unit that you go hatches down. Typically, the minute you run into an enemy, again, assume this guy was good order. Um, this vehicle moves into this location, hatches down. We now have an enemy in line of sight. I have two choices. I can either keep my turret to the front. I don't have a bow-mounted machine gun, so it doesn't matter. So I'm going to just turn my turret to the left so I can engage this unit. And my main armor, with even though it's only a 2, will be facing the front. Now, other vehicles must also attempt to engage whenever possible. So we had a squad, half squad here originally. In this case, both units would be able to see this one. This guy would not because of the rubble. So this unit here would have to keep moving until he gets a target. So assuming they've used 18 move at this point, we can go forward once more for 19, 20. Then we go 21, 22, and then we could stop for 23 and bypass, and that would be fine. Now we have a target for this tank, and this tank. Again, once you have a target for the lead vehicle, your platoon formation is negated, except if you're radialist, in which case you must continue. Always try and bring as much of your armaments on a known target as possible. And when it comes to MGs, as with most things, there's a priority list. So you're always going to try and target AT weapons first, makes sense. Then the closest location with most known infantry. And finally, you're looking at vehicular targets. Again, we are aware that there's a Stug sitting here on the road, nice beaten zone here. We might have LOS to here. I haven't measured it yet, but depending on the tank, you could decide to take your shot. Once more, the system really wants you to be always in motion, always using bounding fire. Typically, again, rules is written, every vehicle will always get a move command, barring panic. Now, again, in this case, I would overrule it because I have a target. I have targets, so there's absolutely no reason for these guys to move, even though they're in hold attitude. I also have an opportunity maybe to take a shot at the Stug. However, again, rules as written is every vehicle gets a move command. Now, if you have multiple targets, you fire at the one that gives you the best odds of killing, or the easiest to hit, or the easiest to kill in that order. So you want the best kill number, then easiest to hit, and then easiest to kill. Every vehicle, again, will get a move command and use bounding fire unless you have a circled breakdown number. Now, these guys have a breakdown of 11, but it's not circled, so that's fine. They don't have to worry about the low ammo. They would still have to, again, rules of red, and use bounding fire. I don't like doing bounding fire for the reasons I've already explained. When it comes to things like bog hexes, you'll typically only enter them if you're forced to. When possible, you're going to use bypass, in this case here. So say we actually had stone rubble in this location, and we have our vehicles here. We want to get to this location. We're going to use bypass to get around the rubble. We may only have the one before we have a target, but we're not going to drive deliberately through the woods, risking bog if we don't have to. Same with mud or deep snow. Again, you want to, it's in the best interest of the AFV. And if you have mud or deep snow, you make your bog die roll. And if you unfortunately are in those circumstances, you get returned to that location and your bog. But generally speaking, whenever possible, you're going to attempt to use bypass. All right, let's look at enemy route. Now, enemy route uses the standard route rules. Again, player's discretion on how that's applied. So in this case here, let's say these guys final protective fired and they broke. They have a commissar and they have to move because they're adjacent. So they have options. One, we can ignore the building we're in, right? And we can go to I-7, not H7. Yeah, we could because we don't see these units yet. Or we could run across to J5, which is probably the better option. Of course, the problem is going to be I6 because we're going to have possible interdiction, except those guys are broken from an earlier attack, let's say. So you decide what's in the best interest of the unit. bearing in mind the victory conditions that you're trying to uh, gain as a German. In this case, you would have to go back. Actually, you couldn't go back because you'd be moving closer to the uh, enemy. So you'd have to go downstairs, assuming the stairwell existed under the rubble. You would go downstairs for, and then you'd come on here for 2. Again, you'd risk interdiction. So um, you could stay here, or you could just low crawl to H6. Again, you as a player have to decide what's the best way to do that. If we have, say, a commissar back here, and this unit is in this location, assuming this 247 is not here, uh, obviously you're going to route towards the nearest leader to take advantage of that capability. If the commissar would be in this location and this unit was broken, again, this unit is not here, then you have the opportunity maybe of going 2 into that building, down for 3, 4, and then 5, 6 into this building here, assuming the commissar is on the ground level. Again, you'll always head towards a good order leader whenever possible with a broken unit. An enemy leader, again in this location, will always rout with his broken unit, especially if he's facing being swamped in close combat. He's not going to stay here while the squad is gone. He's going to go with it. If he was pinned, then of course he would voluntarily break to make sure that he could rout away. Right, so again, a leader is not going to hang out. He's going to voluntarily break if possible, as long as it doesn't lead to a surrender. And he can get away, he'll voluntarily break and join his unit. All right, so if we're looking into the advance phase now, remember hold attitude will only advance if it makes sense. Typically, example here, you're in a fortified location and your hold attitude, you're never going to move. You're in an improved position. And assuming this is a VPO, would it be even better? You're not going to move. Why would you? If, on the other hand, you're in hold attitude, say you're in the woods and you have all these buildings around you, you have options. You can come to the wood, you can go to the stone, depending on your tactic. There is priority list, again, as per normal, and provided you don't have to drop a heavy weapon or leave a VPO, these are your choices. So you're basically going to advance toward a friendly controlled if you're not in one. And you just go down the list till you find the one that matches. Now, if your advance attitude, as these units here are, you're always going to move towards a friendly controlled VPO location, in this case here, or in this case, if we call all stone VPO, we can move forward. But let's assume that this the only acts as VPO, we would have to move towards it. Again, there's another priority list in this case. We're always going to try and target the friendly VPOs whenever possible. If, on the other hand, we do not have any VPO, as in this mission, we just have blocks, you treat the block as basically a VPO for movement purposes, so you could do the same kind of thing. In some missions, again, where you don't have VPO and not this block mission, you could make a roll on the advance phase. You would roll on the advance attitude movement table to determine which way we go, again, based on the orientation. So right now we have this one here on the right. So 1 to 3 would be to the north, 4, 6 would be to the south. So this unit here, once more, if they're in this location on the ground floor, and we roll for the first guy, he's going to move south, so he's going to come under here. The half squad is going to move there as well. All right, so that's if you're in, if no VPO exists and you're in advanced attitude, and or if you're hold not in a VPO slash improved position, then you'll roll on the attitude table to move. Of course, you will not be able to exit off the north and south board edges. As we already said, remember that you're prevented from doing that. You can only exit off the friendly board edge or the enemy board edge, depending. If you're in Gully or a Wadi and you're in the terrain, you're going to assume crest status as part of your advance, provided that you're going to get a target. If you're not going to get a target, you're just going to stay where you are, inside the gully where you can't be shot. All right, so let's look at close combat. So let's give our commissar here unbroken. He's going to be in with these guys, and we want to move into close combat. The way you do this is you must take a normal task check before you enter. So we look at our modifiers. If we're an unpinned, good order activated enemy and non-crew, so gun crews like this will never enter willingly close combat. Berserk, obviously, they will, or if they're attacked, of course. But they're never going to deliberately enter themselves. If you're in hold attitude, as these guys are, you will not have to roll to enter as well. You're basically going to stay in your position and wait to be attacked. However, these guys are advanced attitude, and we want to move. We have to pass an NTC first, one per unit. So the commissar, half squad, and the squad all have to take their own individual task check using these modifiers. So we have a friendly unit in BPO location. Assuming this is not the case, that doesn't apply. We are in advance is a -1, not berserk. Doesn't apply, does not apply. Per enemy unit entering already in. So we're going to have 1, 2 units entering us as well. So that's going to be a further -2 for a total of -3. So we make our task check for the commissar with a -3. We have a -3 for the half squad. And we have a -3 for the 447. So they've all made their task checks. And remember, their morale is increased because of the commissar anyways. And so now they're all eligible to enter close combat in the advanced phase. Single man counter, assuming these two have failed, the only time this guy would, the commissar will obviously never enter combat by himself. If these two units have failed, he would just stay with his units. Now, when it comes to actual target designation, again, there's a table. So we look at table A3E, and it tells us we have 3 choices that we can make. So we roll a die. We get a roll of 4, and we have match each enemy unit versus 1 friendly unit using the following priority. Best odds, highest friendly morale. Now, there's only one. Again, in this case, there's only the 1 unit, so you would not check this list. But if we had multiples, say these units were all in here, into one big melee, then you'd obviously have to roll to see how you sort it out. So we said 3, so it's going to be match each enemy unit versus 1 friendly unit using priority best odds. So we have a squad and a half squad and a leader, and we've got all of this. So our best odds would probably be the 447, the leader, taken on the 467, or actually it doesn't matter because it would be 1-to-1 anyways. So the 447 and the 10-0 can take on the 467 and the 80, and the half squad will take on the 467. All right, so let's do that attack. So we have no ambush, so we're looking at 5-to-5, 1-to-1 odds. We need a 5 or less to affect the German. All right, we will boxcars. So that means the German, you the player can decide whether or not you want to run out. If this had been the German close combat attack, we would have the option, provided we're unpinned, good order, and non-berserk, of withdrawing. So in this case, assuming this was a German boxcars, we could actually withdraw out of the combat. Again, there's a priority list on where you go to. Typically, it's going to be the best terrain that gives you targets. So we're going to move into the ground level of this location because he rolled a 12. Now, exception to that, of course, is Japanese. And if the combined unit silhouette of the unbroken enemy units is less than the combined unit silhouette of friendly, again, you'll always withdraw. So rather than fight it out, we're going to withdraw because they have 7 silhouette and we have 6, so they outnumber us. Now, when it comes to situations like here, we have a gun crew, say that they're in a non-fortified location here, and let's throw in a pioneer assault. All right, and in this location, we also have a 628, and they have a leader as well. We'll give them a commissar. All right, so at the German turn, German advances into the close combat. Remember their hold attitude, so they wouldn't move. We can even say that this guy is concealed, and the gun will not be, though, because it's taking pot shots at our Stug. All right, so we have a mix of things. There's a priority list for what we attack. We have personnel with the smallest inherent firepower factor, personnel with the highest morale, AFV with functioning armament, or a vehicle with functioning armament. None of that applies in this case. However, if we were, for example, in a hex with a vehicle, then we would have to consider that as well. So in this case, when we make our ambush rolls, assuming nobody gets ambush, the German unit would probably attack the 9 to 2 odds rather than having their firepower at the concealed unit, assuming these guys decide not to fire back and they're just going to stay concealed. Again, that's in probably the best interest of the Russians. These guys stay concealed so that in their following prep fire phase, they can do triple point blank at these guys in their location. So that's going to be a 9 versus 2 kind of attack. Again, you playing the Germans, you can do whatever you want. Enemy will always respond according to this priority list. Once more, the withdrawal, should the enemy roll a 12 like happened there, again, you're going to go into the highest TEM. You're going to move closer to enemy units. You want to ensure you have a target and or near closer to the friendly board edge. Now, if hand-to-hand was allowed, like some of the historical ASL games, then the enemy will always use it if they've got ambush. So in this case here, let's assume the Germans, let's see what the Germans do. So they rolled a 3 down 1, and the Russians get a -2. Let's give them a 1. There we go. So the Russians have ambush, and hand-to-hand is possible. They would immediately go into hand-to-hand because they have less than a 1-to-2 ratio, less than or equal to a 1-to-2 ratio. You'll find out, if you haven't already, that hand-to-hand favors the weaker side. So in this case, we have a total of 9 firepower to 9 firepower, so it's 1-to-1. We would not shoot. If we replace this with a 447, then we're looking at 7 firepower to the 9, and therefore we would meet the requirement for using hand-to-hand. So because we have ambush and we're outnumbered at the 1-to-2 ratio, we can use hand-to-hand. Again, it's automatic if the enemy ambushes the friendly side, which happened in this case. Enemy Japanese will never attempt to capture, and should you attempt to capture a Japanese unit, they will always attempt Harikari, provided the odds are greater than 4-to-1 against them. All right, so if you look at the close combat table, if you're on the 4-to-1 against the Japanese, and you that's with you trying to declare a capture attempt, they'll attempt to kill themselves. Enemy prisoners with a broken friendly unit will always attempt to escape, only if there are no good order friendly units in that location. All right, so that is Enemy Actions Continued Part 2. I tried to cover all the different actions that happen in the different phases of a player turn on friendly and enemy side. So hopefully I was cognizant. Again, I'm suffering from a cold right now, so my brain's a little bit foggy. If you've made this far, again, just comment down below that you did. And next up, we're going to do 2 more videos, I think, in this tutorial series. That's going to be map setup and selection. And we're going to do another one on the friendly side, campaign side. I think that'll finish off Solitaire. Again, those of you that have been watching me do the Red Barricades, or I should say Red Factories campaign game, Solitaire-wise, hopefully you're enjoying the show. And basically, that's the best way to learn this stuff, is to actually follow along. So I made a file available in that first video in the comments to my OneDrive, where I have all the information, including the vassal log, so you could spark it up and you could follow along. And if you're new to Solitaire, that might be the best way for you to dive in, just replicate what I'm doing and see how it goes. Now, I don't claim to be a perfect player. I make plenty of mistakes, and I like it when you guys point those out so that I can correct myself. I want to make sure that I've always given out correct information. So if at any point I've made an error, make sure you let me know. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.